can unmute yourself now.
Oh, I've been muted this whole time.
Now everybody has been muted except I and you. Kamlesh has done it. So we can begin now. It's being recorded. Very good evening to all of you. It's a pleasure to see so many people joining us once again. Today we have with us Jackie McInley, who is going to talk to us. Jackie has been a regular visitor to Rajghat, and she's going to talk on a topic whose theme is real inquiry in dialogue possible? Many of you would not be knowing Jackie personally, especially those who are not regular visitors to Rajghat. So I'll briefly introduce Jackie to you. Ms. Jackie McInley founded and ran an independent Krishnamurti center called Open Door in southern France from 2004 till 2013, hosting monthly inquiry weekends and international gatherings. Outside these events, she also organized and facilitated local dialogue meetings in public venues for many, many years. A foreign language teacher by profession, basically in schools, higher education and business. She now spends her time traveling to various Krishnamurti centers and schools around the world, facilitating dialogues and programs, sharing skills in the schools, and helping out in care-related projects. Unable to travel during lockdown, she has been facilitating online programs with the Krishnamurti Foundation of America, as well as bi-weekly online dialogue groups with Kinfonet. Jackie has been a regular visitor to Rajghat. She organizes retreats there. And I remember a talk she gave in Vasanta College to the girl students. And the theme was, why it is so difficult to say no. I really liked it. And maybe someday we'll request Jackie to talk about it. Jackie, the format is that you can speak for anywhere between 40 to 60 minutes. After that, we'll request Dr. Gajanan Rao, who is a very senior trustee of the Krishnamurti Foundation India and has seen and interacted with Krishnaji for many, many years, to make some observations. And I'll also request Harshad Bhai, who is here, to say something. And then the floor will be open for question and answer session. So this is the way we'll operate. With these words, I want to thank you once again for accepting the invitation from Indore Krishnamurti Study Circle to come here and talk to us. Thank you so much. You can begin now.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this affectionate welcoming, as is always the case when I come to Rajghat and I come to India. One has to be attentive right from the beginning. And I thought I would begin with that, actually, with our first step now. Because every talk, every dialogue, every moment of relationship, every walk in nature, most of all, one could say, of our human relationships, don't those relationships all have a first step? And I would like to relate that sense of the first step now, that we are going to unpack a little what is taking place now, if we can, I would like to relate that to inquiry itself. Because this is a talk, but this is also a dialogue. And this talk is taking place now. The relationship between us is taking place now. And there is a first step that is occurring now. So let's look at that a little closer. So my question is, what is the deeper nature now, or just what is the nature of our first step actually now? In nature, it's easy, it's wonderful to have that instant connection with a ground that doesn't seem to be cluttered with the ground that perhaps our minds are cluttered. And all human beings must experience that nature that is, well, difficult to say more, but you sense what I'm saying. So that nature is there. But what is the ground on which our first step now will occur? Do you see what I mean? Are we beginning now from a ground of nature, like the nature we experience along the Ganges, in the Swiss mountains, in all these beautiful places? Is it that nature? We presume it is. We presume there isn't any difference between nature and our nature. But perhaps there is a tremendous difference. So isn't it then absolutely necessary for any inquiry, in a dialogue, in a talk together, that we understand the nature of the ground that we are standing on now? If we have no sense or feeling or sensitivity to the ground we are actually standing on now, as we listen, as we speak, as we reflect, as we interact, if we have no sense of that ground, then surely it is that ground that will inquire. So what is the nature of our ground? The ground is nervous, wishing to rush perhaps towards something, acquisitive, wanting, longing, maybe bored, maybe angry, irritable, perhaps preoccupied with a problem, perhaps casual. All of these things are not guilty. We're not guilty of these things. We just are these things. No? We are but how do we answer that? So again, what is the nature of the ground that is here now? A shared ground, the ground of the human condition, the human conditioning, the ground of memory. Those are our flowers and trees and mountains and rivers. This is what I am suggesting, but they are not the true mountains. They are not the true rivers. So this is just gently being proposed. So in a dialogue, often people say to me, oh, dialogue, I don't do that anymore. Goodness, waste of time. And of course, as a facilitator, at the moment, as Dubeji told you, I am facilitating twice a week online dialogues, plus 5-day retreats. So I'm doing a lot of online dialogue. And do I agree with that person who says, oh goodness, I just don't go to dialogue anymore. I mean, it doesn't work. Well, quite frankly, if we were sitting together in Rajghat with a cup of tea and a biscuit, I would probably say, goodness, yes, it is terribly difficult. Because often it collapses into people wanting to speak over others, people getting upset with each other, people dominating each other. Can be quite a place. So no wonder people say, I'm afraid I prefer to go for a nice walk. Of course, so do I. Between you and me. However, I also sense perhaps, because we have to be very tentative here with our first step, I sense that perhaps, or really we can only ask the question, is there a dialogue where a ground of true inquiry can take place? That is I hope this is clear, what I am proposing we look at. If we're asking the question, is true inquiry, is real inquiry even a possibility in dialogue? We have to look at it in a very close. I love the way Krishnamurti says this. I'm sure all of you have that quotation in mind. Start very near, he says. But often I don't start near. I'm already rushing to what I think I know. And this doesn't make me a bad person, but it is just the nature of this brain. It is the limitation of this brain. So really, I think, are we saying that it is limited brain that is attempting to make a first step. Would you say that? It is what we are, as we are, attempting to make a first step, attempting to inquire in a serious way. Not an inquiry born, growing, born out of a ground of confusion, conditioning, everything that we are. So I don't know if you're feeling the pinch of this paradox. It's rather serious. We're a little pinned, all of us, against the wall. How can we move? Since we say our ground is a ground of wanting to know. The relationship, for example, with a speaker, with somebody who's giving a talk. What is the nature of that relationship? What's in my mind? What's in the mind of the person who gives the talk? We have to be honest about this. Isn't this what Krishnaji is asking us, to come very close to what we are? And he says, if I'm not mistaken, that is inquiry. That is the nature of our inquiry, to discover what we are. So it's very strange because we want to discover what we are with a nature that seems to be incapable of discovering what we are. So what are we? Are we exactly what is taking place? So is the person in a dialogue group or participating in a talk, remembering that Krishnamurti always said, if you are participating in a talk, there's only us. There's no real person giving a talk and other people that are paying attention. It's really what is being asked. It's the question, isn't it? That is really the subject. So in a dialogue, one could say the first step might be the necessity to be a little sensitive. In the same way we're sensitive to birds and trees, which come so naturally after a while. And it has a certain ease to it. and joy. That kind of sensitivity. So is my first step, is our first step, I should say, in dialogue, a sensitivity. Because often I'm not sensitive. As a facilitator, I'm not sensitive. As a participant, I'm not sensitive. I may think I'm sensitive. I have an idea of myself as being sensitive. But what I wonder is, instead of having that idea floating around as a kind of part of my conscience that I can't really do anything about, is it possible to be sensitive about what I am? That I don't want to be sensitive, or I don't know how to be sensitive, or I think I'm sensitive. So my proposal is, in dialogue, can I get very near to every response, every thought that is taking place as the topic is being explored? Otherwise, the topic rushes around in the same spirit as conditioning. I'm sure you've all seen that in dialogues. So I hope something is being conveyed here. So we're still with this sense of what is the first step. Not what is the speaker's first step, or the facilitator's first step, or my first step as a teacher, or my first step as someone in authority, or my first step as somebody who doesn't know anything about Krishnamurti and feels a little insecure. Not that first step. Or can I be aware of that first step, rather than take that first step with all that baggage? If I think I'm a great facilitator, then some people may be hoodwinked into that, but there'll always be bright souls who will see through that. Thank goodness. So I'm not proposing we should go around seeing through others, because that would be very mean, to just see conditioning in my friends, in my brothers and sisters, in my other human beings, in my fellow human beings. If I just criticize them, but don't include myself in the criticism, then obviously there'll be a problem. So, if I have a sense of an identity, what Krishnamurti calls the image, but that we very often translate into an idea, can one get a sensitive sense that one is an image. And there will be clues to that. A thought, a little thought that, like a bird, that flies across the mind. Oh, I should do this, or these little whispers, I suppose, whispers that take place in our brain as thoughts. If we are sensitive to these thoughts, these whispers, perhaps we can get a clue of what we are. If I'm not sensitive, I will just give a talk, be a facilitator, projecting that very image. No? So this is all very serious, because this inquiry is a very humbling and sometimes even a painful realization of what I actually am. But somehow, isn't there some kind of affection in this moment of where I touch, or I'm more sensitive to what is taking place? When things are touched, isn't there more affection there? We talk about being affectionate in dialogues. Oh, we must walk like two people. That's what Kay tells us. We should walk down a shady lane together. So I try and do that. But surely it's something I can't do if I am already walking in a very different lane. However, if there's a touching of exactly what we are, all together, nobody is exempt from the things that are being spoken now. Maybe they are. But my sense is that we are in this together. This is our ground. So this, in a dialogue group, if from the beginning there isn't this invitation to be aware of what is actually taking place, as well as what is being discussed, I feel one feels that it is not possible to dialogue with any depth. So the dialogue begins, or the talk begins, and what is involved in the first step? Listening is involved. So first we had what I think I am, who I think I am, who I think the other person is, which if not seen will create its own movement. Now we are talking about, and we talked about sensitivity, Now we are talking about that moment of sensitivity and listening that Krishnamurti talks for many, many, many hours and pages of books. What is that listening? That listening where not a I want to listen, but is listening a moment where things become revealed as they are touched, as they are felt, as they are connected to. I'm looking at the time because I have no sense of, we began at 22, right? So I don't know if you're kind of picking up on something here, but I'm picking up on the sense that is inquiry in a dialogue also a form of meditating. Of course, here, the brains in us all will go, oh yes, meditating, we know what that is. No, but without the word, as something we don't know yet what it is it a kind of meditating? Does it require that depth? It requires that depth to attend a Krishnamurti talk, even on a video. But he's not here. We have to create that depth amongst ourselves now. So we're proposing that can inquiry be a moment, an instant of honesty, perception of what is actually taking place. Right. So what is taking place? There is a sense of agitation, could one say, in our field. A sense of pain almost. Maybe when we begin to look closely at these things, there is a sense of all the things I don't want to look at. That's what I'm feeling now. Everything I don't want to realize that I am is there. It's quite something. But I said, maybe you will say later, no, that's not what inquiry is. I have a sense that that is what inquiry is. To come very near the nature of ourselves. Otherwise, why I feel this with a great urgency is because otherwise we've already stepped away from what is taking place in my responses, in my thoughts. And if I step away from it, how can I step into it? Of course, I'm using I for the moment. Allow me to do so, just linguistically. But that obviously down the road needs to be looked at. That's all part of this ground that Krishnamurti says to us is a divided ground. Yet in my thoughts, when I'm, when I'm thinking I've really got a point, or often happens to me when I'm spouting on about this and that, am I aware that's division? Certainly not. It almost seems to be the solution of division, to want to sort everything out, to understand everything, to have lots of great things to say. I'm being a little harsh on us all, but I'm trying to feel it in an affectionate way, because it is is it possible to feel these things, to touch these things affectionately, gently? So we do, it seems like we need for this whole ground to be seen, this ground of conditioning, it seems that we do need that peace that we get when walking along the Ganges. There seems to have to be that quality. And yet, it is not always there. Perhaps it's often not there. So begin from where you are, he says. But I often don't do that. I often don't begin from where I am. I begin from where I want to get to. I begin from what I want to be. No? So, our first step, which is the first point I'm making in this talk, which is will also be the last step, because it will be the last point I'm making in this talk, because I feel that the essence of a more meaningful inquiry in a dialogue, or with oneself, or reading K, it's all dialogue. Or in relationship with my friend, that too is dialogue. And that too is inquiry. Now, for example, one of the interesting, we could say, well, Kay would call it content. Maybe I'll say it's like one of the interesting aspects of the landscape of this ground of conditioning is confusion, or judgment. No? When I sit in a dialogue group, don't I have judgment of other people? it's not wrong to have it. It's just that if I'm aware of it in a verbal sense, okay, it might make me a little bit more well-behaved, but don't I need to really penetrate a little more, as we are saying, with sensitivity into that? So now we're asking, in a group, if whatever comes up, one of the things as a facilitator I notice very often is confusion. Another thing I notice as a facilitator is judgment of others. Another thing I notice as a facilitator is, and all these things may be buried in us, and we say, no, sorry, Jackie, that's not, I'm actually not like that. I've actually gone beyond all of this. And when I'm in a dialogue, I don't do all those things. Okay, my mind also it projects that. That's the ground, it's part of the ground, to be able to imagine that, no, I'm sorry, you can't tell me I'm like that, I'm not. But perhaps this is the ground of all of us that we're trying to look at. That at a deeper level, it's not just I am judgmental or I'm not judgmental. Is judgment in that ground? Does it make up that ground? Sounds a strange thing to say. Is it? Yeah, is it what's there the whole time? Is confusion there the whole time in this ground of conditioning? And either I run with it unawares, or perhaps I am a little more aware of it. Perhaps even it can be penetrated so that it begins to, something else begins to happen to it. So basically it means that we must all engage in inquiry. Give our hearts to it. Didn't he say that? But he goes much further. Give our hearts, give our minds, give our lives to this. So in doing that, as I begin to take this step, there may be confusion, there may be irritation, there may be fear, there may be sorrow, there may be all number of moments, instants that are experienced. Normally they're experienced fleetingly because the mind is very good at escaping, finding a solution. We know this, we've read this. But do we experience it directly? Do we see it? Because, you know, then we have to start going slowly because, well, what's experiencing? What's seeing? And then all the kind of questions that we're all very deeply interested in that come up in all our dialogues. What is it that's seeing? All of these things come up. But what I'm proposing is, if they come up and are only treated in a ground of thought, conditioning that is unaware of itself, how can there be any real penetration into the question? Another thing that is observed that prevents dialogue seems to be this sense that I already know what's going on. I've formed conclusions. But again, if you tell me that, I say, no, I have no conclusions here. My mind is, I've understood all about that, about conclusions, but have I? So my point is, don't I need to check every time? I can't assume anything, surely. Another thing that I've noticed in dialogue is that we come together, and often it is a party, an exchange, a lively exchange often, of what I have deeply experienced, and I'm trying to communicate to you, my friend. And then you tell me about what you have deeply experienced. Now, I'm not actually saying this takes place on a verbal level. Sometimes it even does. But I'm saying this may be behind what we're saying, the ground of what we're saying, the makeup of what we're saying. I've had this experience, and I just want you all to see what I see. And I think this is very natural. But is it limited? I think it is. Because I feel that there is that limitation that, without realizing, I'm not fully meeting the moment. I'm lost. I'm carried by. I'm caught up in a sense that I know what we're talking about. I've had an experience about this. So we even have to drop that, which is very difficult. But if we don't, and we all see what happens, is that dialogue is almost a beautiful dance of fragmentation. It's almost an art form, a piece of art, like a Picasso painting of the difficulty of communication. Or it can look like something really wonderful that we've created together, beautiful. Oh, we really know what's going on here, especially if we choose the right people to do it. But I'm saying none of that, it's okay, but none of that can really penetrate. So even there, you see there's some kind of movement. As soon as this person is trying to get a point across, there is an interesting disconnect, which only sensitivity can pick up on. Not my sensitivity, but sensitivity. There's an interesting disconnect when I want to make a point. But if there is this attention to what is taking place, what's unfolding as we're speaking, what are the responses that are actually involved, or how does the listening bear its fruit? It bears the fruit of that ground of conditioning. If just now there was a disconnect from that, and something inside the mind wanted to persuade or push or make a point or something, and that kind of disconnect from the moment is, I think, the first step that is away from inquiry. So it's almost as though if I don't step away from myself, if I don't escape what is taking place, does that non-escaping create a sensitivity? Or is it me who decides to be sensitive? So does sensitivity arise, just come in, like wind, like a bird flying? When I don't avoid what is taking place. Which is a very strange way of looking at it, isn't it? But it seems to be something like that. Again, we feel, I have to be sensitive. No, I don't think the sensitivity that I want to manufacture is a limited sensitivity. So we're saying we're not moving away. There's sensitivity, there's looking, and then we can ask the question, our topics that are chosen in our groups, and does the question in that kind of environment, where there isn't a moving away, where there's an attention, an awareness of what is, does the inquiry unfold itself without me unfolding it? Is there an energy in that not moving away that is an energy of opening. And Krishnamurti asks that beautiful question. He says, well, actually, no, it's an observation, but I'm sure there's a question that maybe it's coming to you also. There's that observation that the question itself does the penetrating. Is that the case? So, where are we on the time? Okay, all right. So let's just start to end this. So I hope something has been conveyed about dialogue, the limitations of dialogue, and the lack of depth that all of us share as being responsible for. As a facilitator, I can tell you that I definitely share this lack of depth. And one is always questioning, how can this whole field, this whole ground of conditioning that goes beyond just my little life of conditioning, there's a much deeper ground that is affecting the lives of everyone. And that may be one of the most religious, I feel like saying, aspects of any dialogue, whether it be us together now. This is a religious inquiry. It's not a discussion. When I read Krishnamurti, is it a religious inquiry? Not formal religion, we know that. But does it have that religious quality? And what is that religious quality? Because immediately we'll start having an idea about what that is. So I'm proposing the beginning, the first step. Is it to just relax? Just like we relax with our good friends when we feel not under pressure, with people who don't make us feel we need to defend ourselves and put up images. Can we, together in that kind of atmosphere, just begin to be aware of what is actually taking place inwardly, but really outwardly as well, whatever is taking place. And we may discover a far more serious necessity for dialogue than just being able to communicate with each other. Because we're discovering perhaps a quality that may be able to touch certain aspects of ourselves and dissolve them, dissolve the division. This we have to discover this. We have to find this out together. So I think that's probably come to its own conclusion, its own end. There's much more to say, but I'm not going to go there. So
Thank you, Jackie.
It's about an hour.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks a lot for taking us through the whole landscape of dialogue process, right from sensitivity to listening to the state of not knowing, where one is willing to listen and learn, and also silence, because it's only in that state one is able to listen and observe. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for covering all that.
Thank you.
May I, before we take questions, I think Dinesh ji has one. May I request Dr. Gajanan Rao to make some observations? Yes, sir. Unmute yourself, sir. Unmute. Yeah. You are muted again, sir. Unmute. Unmute.
Is all right?
Yeah. Yes.
I didn't know. Thank you, Mrs. McInley. we were going to have such a lovely lullaby sung over the dialogue and how the dialogue should be. It was really great. Although initially it looked a little abnormal for us, who are always quick to say something or anything, and also a delivery which is quick and fast. And I'm so glad you really, as Zubeji pointed out, how sensitivity, the sensitivity that presides over a dialogue, the affection that is the content also of the mind, and so the simplicity and silence, as the Veji said. Not quick to say something the other is speaking, which you don't even hear. Krishnaji's main difficulty is silencing people in a dialogue. So listen first. Did you listen to what he said? No, you didn't. It's a small example. I won't take much time. There was a dialogue session with him in Bombay. He was dialoguing in a way that was understandable by people. There was a man who shouted from the back a lot of things, and all of us had to stop. He went on over our heads, saying something speedily, and in a way it was a little jarring to all of us. And all of us kept laughing over whatever he was saying. He at once arrested the whole atmosphere to silence, saying, "Sir, you're not listening. That gentleman has something very important to say." They called him over to his side and sat him up there And God, we didn't listen to a word of what he said in that confusion. You won't believe me. He narrated all that he said to the audience as to what we wanted. And it looked to me really important of what he was asking Krishnaji. And he went on deliberating on this. Deliberating is a word Krishnaji used. Deliberating. Deliberating would mean few people getting together and very respectfully, without much noise, seeing what is, and then evolving certain beautiful thing. And when that happens, there is religiosity in it, as Miss McInley said. Real religiosity and sensitivity, as she really emphasized, is not yours or mine. It's beautifully said, really. I always thought that I should be sensitive very often. I know also it was wrong because it's not, if you're not our nature to be sensitive, it interferes with listening because our ego is simply not admitting any sensitivity to come into us. It's really a tragedy. And so many dialogues could have been much more, shall I say, valuable if only we had learned how to listen. In listening, as Krishnaji would say, miracles can occur. Deep listening, quiet listening, without the tendency to always intervene with what you think is right. Really, madam, I really appreciated your unique way of course, delivering was a little annoying in the beginning, but I understood how how your intent of conveying something which is very valuable for a dialogue. This never has been conveyed like this, ever, in what I heard. Thank you for it, really. And we understand now that when you bring in the question of religiosity in it, and if you're looking so intently about what you want to get at, as she said, I'm guessing, I'm not very sure. The sacred can appear at looks as you dig. Because in silence, miracles can happen. In humility, miracles can happen. Kindness, miracles can happen. In an affection that binds you all, a lot of good things can happen. I suppose it's a real hint you gave that what could be a dialogue and the people, participants, what is the quality of mind which brings out a dialogue in the best manner possible and conducts the dialogue in the best manner. And not much to say. Even yesterday I was hearing a dialogue in tape in Rajghat. Lot of confusion. I think we are all very confused people. That's what I thought. Very confused people. Never did we look at ourselves as Jackie McInley pointed out. Let us make this an opportunity every minute. Let us learn about ourselves. Every opportunity there are which present when we fail to learn about ourselves. So in a dialogue, I suppose all this can happen. And she hinted at self-knowing in a way. She hinted at sensitivity. She talked about, the quality of listening. And an important key word she said, this is a kind of meditation. Even Krishnaji has sometimes said, sir, all this in a small group dialogue, him and a few scholars, which went on very well. Sir, did you see the whole of what we were saying, thinking, and deliberating? Because in a way, is meditation. There's no meditation sitting outside and doing something. In dialogue, actual meditation can happen only if we shut ourselves long enough for the other to complete and slowly, respectfully present what we want to say. not always from the knowledge. You can even see when you're sensitive, the knowledge interfering, the conditioning interfering, which is. So I think a dialogue is the best tool to slowly rid ourselves of so much conditioning. Well, thank you, madam. It's an hour and 10 minutes. Maybe some people want to say something. I really
Thank you. Thank you so
thank you.
much. Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Before we take Dinesh Wagmare's questions, may I request Dr. Harshad Parekh to say something, sir? Unmute yourself. Unmute. Unmute yourself. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jackie. You spoke very gently, and there was a lot of space between your sentences. And that is very important when a person speaks very gently, very clearly, and about whether it is possible a real inquiry in a dialogue. I think that depends on the quality of people who come together and whether they are able to speak clearly and well, and they can listen to each other with some gaps, silence. So then it is possible to communicate and learn. But I feel that learning is possible on any day, at any moment, when we are really very, very curious. And that first step, curiosity, not thinking something, but looking at what is happening within us, like something is always going on. It's like a train of thoughts. So to be in touch with our own thinking, it is like learning and not judging. Thoughts are coming and going and just watching from a different dimension, what Krishnaji calls awareness. So in that, learning goes on every day, whether we are talking with people or whether we are alone or when we walk in nature. So that opportunity to learn, to come in direct touch with ourselves is possible. And also when I started reading Krishnamurti for 7 years, I had no dialogue with anybody, but I was just reading a little bit of Krishnamurti, then keeping the book away and just looking at what was happening. In that, I felt learning. So I have not felt so much uh, necessity to have dialogue with a group of people, but I have been attending dialogues for about 40 years now and at many, many places. And it is good to listen to people and not to remain with our own ideas and looking. So I have finished. Thank you again, Dr. Gajanan Rao and Jackie. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harshad Bhai. Thank you. I think we can take Mr. Dinesh Wagmare's question. Jackie, for you now. Yes, Dinesh ji, go ahead.
Madam, can you listen to me?
Yes.
I meet you first time. Whenever I meet you first time, always there will be image between to image. despite of the sensitivity, all the sensitivity, no thought whatsoever or no mind movement whatsoever. In that meeting, how inquiry can unfold itself. Are you getting my point?
Again, a little bit, put all you say into something a little bite-sized. If
Okay,
you
I will just repeat.
impossible.
First time I'm meeting you in a dialogue,
Right,
first time I'm seeing you, there will be always an image meeting to image.
absolutely.
And despite of all the sensitivity, say there is no movement of mind whatsoever in any direction, no thought. How an inquiry can unfold itself?
You are saying there is
You
no
said that
you are saying there is no movement of mind, and yet there is the springing to life, we could say, like a flower of image making. It springs up, manifests.
yes,
Yeah, very true, sir. Very true. And for all of us who have been in dialogue and with great intentions to want something to, to happen, yes, this is what actually occurs, what you have done. So then you ask, how is it possible then? Is this your question?
yes.
Yes.
How inquiry can unfold itself?
It really sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? It really, it's not possible. But then also Kay says this to me sometimes, as soon as my mind says it's not possible, or how can that be, the door closes. But that question could be, how can that be, where it keeps the door open? It keeps so it's really, how on earth could that be? But then the question is still there. It's hovering. But if I just throw the question away, the question itself can't have an impact. So that is what I would say. I would say, let the question, am I really interested in that? Do I really want to know, how is it possible? How is it possible? It's a wonderful question. How is it possible? If image making is what comes immediately, how can I possibly proceed?
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you. I think we have another question coming from Durga Nani Gadela. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Yeah. Hello. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. And I'm very grateful listening to you, Ms. Jackie. And I really appreciate this gesture from this study center, like organizing talks like this. It's wonderful listening to you. Yeah, you very effortlessly you have touched upon the all the important points so gently with so much of perfection and all. And as the gentleman previously pointed out, that pause in between, that was really helpful. And I could sense that affection coming from you, even that part also. So it's lovely listening to you. And I just would like to add also, like as a member of Kinfonet, I used to write there. But off late, I just got disconnected. I keep getting the messages about this Zoom online sessions. But now that I've heard you, I think I'll get back to that. And I'll participate more often. Yeah. It's more when such a lovely listening to you. Yeah, that's all I want to communicate.
Thank you.
And it's a wonderful thing, like Krishnamurti's vast teaching, we are part of it. We are so privileged. And we shouldn't let go of this opportunity, in inquiring and all these things. It's a wonderful the man and the teaching, the enormity of it. So as a Krishnamurti reader, I also had been touched by the teaching for many years now, and it's that's all I just would like to communicate.
No,
Thank
but
you.
it's thank you, and I think if I can pick up a little of what you're saying,
Yeah.
it is. I sense that also, that it is wonderful that we can come together.
Yeah.
And is it something like bring it to life?
Yes.
Bring life.
Yes.
And as you said, I think there was a slight interference in sound, but I think you said at the beginning, even though you're so far away,
Yes, yeah.
but this is extraordinary, isn't it? Because this isn't the capacity of a person. This is that quality that we're beginning to penetrate into. So if that is the case, goodness, it can even exist on an online platform. I mean,
I feel the affection we touched, we are touched by the affection of Krishnamurti.
yes.
So that's also a beginning,
Yes.
Already some connection gets made. So there's already the work starts getting, unfold. Maybe that
Yes.
affection we feel for the man, the sensitivity,
Yes.
the love, the intensity of the man. Even when you see in a very ripe old age also, the intensity and the passion of the man. So it's very difficult not to get touched by it, So it's lovely listening to you unfolding all the important points, the ground, the nature of human nature as well as the nature outside, the listening, that's the fundamental aspect of the teaching. So very effortlessly, very nicely, you have covered almost all the very nice points. So it's great listening to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
I think we have another question coming from Anandji. Yes, unmute yourself, sir. Unmute. Yeah. Unmute.
Yeah, can you, hi Jackie.
Hi.
I have a question. As long as I continue to operate in my old mind or my old brain, how is it possible for me to look at something new? Is my question, Jackie.
I can't.
Even the dialogues we are having week after week or with as often as possible, can I observe that is happening from my old brain, from the old mind?
That's it.
I keep saying I'm reading Krishnamurti maybe for the last 10 years, 40 years, 60 years. But can I see all this is happening from my old brain, not the new mind, which Gay is talking about.
That's it.
The moment I say I should have a new mind, again, I'm back to where I was. So what makes me see things or have clarity of what he's talking about, or when we have a dialogue? When we have a dialogue, we talk about care and affection. Can I observe, is there any care and affection when you and I having a dialogue over, man?
Yes. And can I observe, is there any care and affection, not as something that is looking, it's divided from the thing I'm looking at. Not I decide to have care and affection and apply it to something, subject, object. But that there is a noticing of this old mind, like we were saying the whole time of the talk, that it's because I'm ignoring, I'm not aware, there isn't a touching, there isn't a sensitivity of the old mind occurring as response. So I'm always moving away, I'm always carried away with that response. So I would say to your question, is it possible to have, yes, that care and affection, but not just as something outward, but as something that is really apply it to oneself? Or even going beyond the idea of myself, apply it to what is taking place. So needs so much energy.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you. I think we have one more question from Professor Ved Parayan. Yes, sir. Go ahead and ask.
Sir, I just would like to make some comment.
Yes, please.
That is, as we really look at Krishnaji's teachings or dialogues or discussions, we find a kind of paradox in what he says. May not be a contradiction, but a paradox in the sense he is asking the listeners or the participants to start from the state of not knowing and not having any conclusions, as the speaker was telling, no judgment and no bias or prejudice. So he is asking us to make our mind free from all those factors that come into the process of dialogue, that interfere the process of dialogue. But how is it possible? Freedom is at the beginning, he says, not at the end. Doesn't it look a kind of paradox or a contradiction? How can anybody be free or have the freedom from knowledge, freedom from known, have a state of not knowing? I mean, even before the inquiry, we think that after I inquire into myself or after we inquire into each other, then only we will understand ourselves and then we will have that kind of state of not knowing or freedom from the known will take place.
Right.
But Krishnamurti is asking this question. It's not a paradox, but once we see the seriousness of or the urgency of understanding ourselves. So he is asking that situation, look outside, what is happening? See the society, how it is. See yourself, how you are. There is a lot of confusion. I mean, a big predicament has been going on, and we are in that. I am in that. You are in that. I mean, my co-participant is also in the same kind of situation, inwardly, outwardly. So there is a crisis which is very, very serious. So he is creating that urgency of understanding and resolving the crisis. So once we hear this, just even outwardly or superficially, definitely we begin to have some kind of silence, some kind of seriousness, some kind of earnestness to understand ourselves. It is possible to put aside all the things that are cluttering our mind, or to some extent the content of the consciousness. We can silence it and then begin to inquire into oneself and share the understanding, because we are one at it. He also says, you are not different from me. We are sailing on the same boat. Your consciousness, my consciousness. Both have to change. If we understand this statement a little bit, because it's a truth, having a power of making you stand still. I mean, it's a wonderful statement and also a very, serious statement. So definitely it is possible to establish not only communication, but also communion with each other. We will have same kind of intensity, we will be on the same level, and we will begin to inquire with the same kind of energy and seriousness. So it's not a paradox, what Krishnamurti is asking, but it looks like a paradox because what we expect at the end of inquiry, he is demanding to have that kind of the state of mind at the very beginning. And it is possible because it's not a path, even inquiry is not a path. The very first statement strikes at the content of the consciousness. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we can take the last question from Mr. Dinesh Wagmare. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Madam, you are talking about this care and affection energy. So what you are trying to convey? Energy of affection and care. What do you mean by energy here? What you are trying to convey?
Interesting question. So that's a very interesting question because I ask you, what are you trying to convey by that? But again, do I sit back and ask you to explain it to me? And of course, yes, that's what I do because that's the way I was educated. That's who we are, to do that all the time. Ask somebody else, but you explain it to me. You tell me. But what if there is something else that is available to us, which is I ask that question, but I don't expect an answer from you. And in fact, I don't even expect an answer from myself. In fact, I refuse the answer that comes because the answer that comes will be an answer that pops out from my problem-solving mind. No? So how I would say to you is, what do we feel about this? I can't tell you, but together, we have to discover that. And that's the whole process of the penetration of the question, which surely the question must not be answered. If I ask a question, give the answer, where is the penetration?
Thank you, Jackie. I think
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, madam.
Then, sir, it's time. Should we close now?
Please announce the next lecture.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Jackie. Thanks a lot for sparing your time and being with us. Next week, we have Professor Hilary Rodrigues. He is a professor of religious studies at Lethbridge University, Canada. He was also a teacher in the Krishnamurti School opened in Canada. So he has agreed to talk to us on Krishnamurti's key teachings. And the timing is 10 a.m. Just to accommodate his timing, we have placed it at 10 a.m. next Sunday. So you're all welcome to join, especially Dr. Vijayanand sir. Please do come 10 o'clock next Sunday. With these words,
Sorry to interrupt you, sir, but we should call JK also once more.
Yeah, we will.
Because a lot of things we want to discuss.
Yes, yes.
We should request her.
Maybe in July we'll again invite her to speak on something. Yes.
We have already decided, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
We decided this.
Okay. So, I hope Jackie agrees to all this. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jackie.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks to all participants.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Kamlesh, please end it.
Okay.